Tonight on Steelers Talk, we're going to talk about Colin Cowherd's latest bullshit narrative on the Pittsburgh Steelers at the top of today's program. Then we'll get into the latest mock draft surrounding the NFL draft media space from ESPN and Pro Football Focus and who they have the Steelers taking in round one of the 2026 NFL draft. And then I thought there was an interesting insight from Big Ben on his podcast this week that I want to share at the end of today's show. So make sure you guys stick around to see what that insight is. And if you guys think Colin Cowherd is an absolute clown that knows nothing about the Pittsburgh Steelers, make sure you guys click that thumbs up icon and help out today's show. If you like our show better than the Herd to get your Steelers content and your takes, make sure you guys click that thumbs up icon and help us out. All right, so let's get into Colin Cowherd's latest narrative surrounding the Pittsburgh Steelers. And he said this multiple times on his show and on his podcast this week, where he apparently thinks the Pittsburgh Steelers, quote unquote, have no run game and can't run the football, and Aaron Rodgers is just carrying the Steelers offense this year. Now, there's been certain games where Rodgers has carried the offense. I mean, last week versus the Ravens was one of those examples. But personally, I think Colin is being a prisoner of the moment because I think he's watched these last two games for the Pittsburgh Steelers where they have not had a great run game. They have not particularly produced a whole lot in the run department these last 2 weeks, largely because just they're not running the football all that much. They've had a really pass-heavy approach these last 2 weeks, and the results for the Steelers' run game really show that. Just a 2.2 average last week, and one of their worst performances, if not the worst performance on the ground all season long. And then against Buffalo, it wasn't much better, just averaging 3.4 yards per rush. And this is just from the running backs, by the way. This is not counting jet sweeps to DK Metcalf or the quarterbacks running. This is just running back production. But on the year, for when you look at the year in total, the Pittsburgh Steelers run game is not bad, guys. It really isn't. And you can make an argument it's a top 10 rushing offense in the National Football League on a per rush basis. They currently rank 9th in rushing EPA, and they currently rank 10th in success rate. So this idea that the Pittsburgh Steelers, quote unquote, can't run the football is just pulled out of his ass. And it's kind of pulled out of probably him watching these last two games, not watching the Steelers a whole lot before that. And, because the Steelers didn't have a run game in these two games that he's watched recently, now he gets this idea that the Steelers just don't have a run game, which just isn't the case. This team is capable of running the football. They just haven't been doing it at the level that they want to these last 2 weeks. And, just 3 weeks ago, this is less than a month ago, guys, Pittsburgh Steelers ran for 160 yards between Jaylen Warren and Kenny Gainwell versus the Chicago Bears. All right, they average like almost 6 yards a carry in that football game. So this idea that the Pittsburgh Steelers are incapable of running the football is just asinine to me. And, if they, last year the Steelers' run game was actually really bad. All right, like they ran the ball a lot and they just weren't very efficient. All right, like when you look at EPA and success rate, they were like bottom 5 in the league in both of those categories. This year they're top 10, so they're actually a much better rushing offense this year than they were last year. Unfortunately, they actually just don't run the ball quite as much. They actually pass the ball at a higher clip this season, and that's probably why you're seeing some of these numbers decline, especially over these last 2 weeks where they've really trusted Aaron Rodgers to be the conductor and to throw the ball quite a bit over these last 2 games. But Pittsburgh's offense is actually, in my opinion, setting itself up pretty nicely to play their best football down the stretch here. I do believe that this is still a more than capable rushing offense, and I think that we'll see the rushing offense bounce back. And then if you can get this passing attack with Aaron Rodgers to play as well and as accurately as Rodgers was playing against the Baltimore Ravens last week, and you can find that consistency down the stretch here with Adam Thielen and MVS being injected into this Steelers passing attack, this Steelers offense could be setting itself up to cook down the stretch and play its best brand of football that we've seen from them all season long, especially if you can get Jaylen Warren and Kenny Gainwell back involved in the run game. And then honestly, I think the same thing goes for this defense, all right? When you get Derek Harmon back, the numbers show that this rushing defense gives up almost 100 less rush yards a game, and you give up less than 100 rush yards in those games that Derek Harmon plays. So it sounds like Derek is getting close to being back. If he's not back this week, I would assume he's going to be back for Week 16 against the Detroit Lions, and you get him for for the final 3 games before a potential playoff game. And once you get Derek Carmen back, I like where this secondary is at. I like the starting secondary with Pierre and Eccles playing their respective roles. I like Jalen Ramsey and Duggar at safety. By the way, Duggar will be back this week, coming back from a hand injury. And then Joey Porter Jr. has been great in man coverage all season long. So you combine that secondary with the improved run defense that we can expect when Derek Carmen gets back. And I think, this Steelers defense isn't the best defense in the league, or I think they had the potential to be that coming into the year. No longer think they have that potential, but do they have the potential to be like a top 10 level unit once we get into the playoffs? I absolutely think that they could also be setting themselves up to play their best overall football once we get into January, and that's exactly where you want to be. The Steelers were in the exact opposite position last year, where you were playing your worst offensive and your worst defensive football of the season late into the year, leading to 5 straight losses and a first-round playoff exit. This year it's the opposite, where I think the Steelers are setting themselves up for success and to play their best football down the stretch, which is exactly where you want to be. So do you believe in the Pittsburgh Steelers this year? What is your level of optimism for this year's Steelers team right now? Put it on a scale of 1, meaning no confidence at all, this team absolutely blows, to 10, meaning they're going to win the Super Bowl this year. Put your level of optimism for me down there in the comment section for today's pinned question. In just a second here, I'm going to tell you about our sponsor today at Harry's. And while I tell you about our sponsor, simply give me a number between 1 and 10. With that, let's have a word from our sponsor today at Harry's. And I don't have to tell you guys that maneuvering the men's razor space nowadays is kind of a nightmare. All right, the quality products are always super expensive, and refilling those products are always super expensive as well. Then when you try and save a little bit of money, you get stuck with dull razors that irritate or even cut your skin. That's exactly why I switched to Harry's Plus, and I haven't looked back since. Harry's Plus has an advanced pivoting system to reach every corner of your face, refined blade tech for a closer, smoother shave, and a weighted metal handle, which is Harry's heaviest handle ever for added control and comfort. But I think the best part about Harry's Plus is how affordable it is. Harry's owns their own world-class blade factory in Germany, which means no outsourcing and no middlemen. And because they control the entire process from steel to shelf, they keep costs low and pass the savings on to you. And even after all this innovation that they've put into this new product, Harry's Plus still costs less than Gillette Fusion. And to put a bow on it all, if you don't love your shave, Harry's will make it right with you, no questions asked. Their risk-free trial means there's zero downside to giving them a shot. And just to show you guys I actually use and love this product, I brought my Harry's Plus razor with me here today just to show you that I actually use Harry's, and I've used them since my college days, where I was, kind of a broke college student, like most college students are, and I didn't want to sacrifice quality, but I also didn't want to completely break the bank on a quality shave. So that's where I found Harry's, and I've been using their products ever since. Not only do I use their razors, but I also use their great smelling post-shave balm as well as shave gel. I couldn't recommend these products anymore to you guys. So for a limited time only, our listeners can get Harry's Plus trial set for only $10 at harrys.com/chat. This set includes the all-new Harry's Plus razor, one refined 5-blade cartridge, a 2-ounce foaming shave gel, and a travel cover to protect your blades on the go. Just head on over to harrys.com/chat to claim this offer, and after your purchase, they'll ask where you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them that we sent you. A big thank you to Harry's for sponsoring today's edition of Steelers Talk. All right, so now let's shift here to some draft rumors here, where some big-name draft analysts are now starting to release their first mock drafts of the draft season, including ESPN's Field Yates and Trevor Sikkema from Pro Football Focus. So let's start here with Field Yates, who has the Pittsburgh Steelers at number 20 overall, taking USC wide receiver Makai Lemon. All right, Lemon is one of the bigger-name wide receivers in this entire class, and Yates has Lemon falling all the way here to number 20 in his first mock draft to the Pittsburgh Steelers to be the new wide receiver 2 here in the Steel City. This is what Yates has to say. He says, besides DK Metcalf, the Steelers do not have a receiver that strikes fear into opposing defenses. Pittsburgh is one of those two teams, is one of two teams with fewer than 100 catches from wide receivers this season with 97. Lemon could change that moving forward. The best way I can describe him, certified baller, as his average size at 5'11", 195 pounds, hasn't slowed him down in any way. We are in an era where dominant receivers don't come exclusively in the form of 6'3", 200-plus pound players with 4.4 speed. Lemon has one of the best catch radiuses I've studied over the past 3 classes, and he has dropped the ball only once in each of his 3 seasons. It would not shock me if he goes a few spots higher than this in April. And this is a really, really good wide receiver class, guys. These are my 5 favorite wide receivers in this class. I would not be surprised if all 5 of these guys go in round 1 of the draft in Pittsburgh next spring. I love Jordan Tyson. He's my number 1 guy out of Arizona State. Do-it-all kind of guy. I think he's going to probably be a top 5 draft pick. Then Carnell Tate, I think, is probably going to be a top 10 draft pick out of Ohio State. A little bit bigger than Makai Lemon is, but another guy that can do it all. And then Lemon, I think, will probably be the 3rd guy off the board. Not the biggest guy in the world, but like he's not a super undersized guy either. Like people continue to talk about his size, but like he's not like undersized. He's pretty average in terms of his size, and he is a superstar level player with his catch radius being insane. His ability to come down with tough catches down the sideline is just absolutely phenomenal. I mean, his route running is great. He's great after the catch. Like he does it all, man. He should be a top 15 pick, maybe even a top 10 draft pick. And if the Steelers can get him, if they're drafting near like the number 20 range here, I would be thrilled to make him our first round pick next year. And I do think that wide receiver is a position that they could consider because they're already paying DK Metcalf a large amount of money. So I'm not sure if they're going to spend a lot of money on a wide receiver too in free agency, for example. But you guys can take a look at what Lemon has done this year. I mean, just absolutely monstrous numbers. 11 touchdowns, averages almost 15 yards a catch, and racked up 75 of those catches this year at USC for almost 1,200 yards. So obviously fantastic production here from Makai Lemon. And I do think that round 1 wide receiver is definitely a possibility. It might even be right up there with quarterback as the most likely position for the Pittsburgh Steelers to take here in round 1, just because, we still don't know what the Steelers are going to do at quarterback. But if you're drafting in like the 20s, your opportunities to get a quarterback that you really believe in are going to be dwindled at that point. And if that's the case, and let's say Aaron Rodgers returns next year to be the starting quarterback of the Pittsburgh Steelers, it's possible that they try and get him another weapon. And I think that Lemon would certainly fit that bill. At this point, he might be the best player available on the board if he falls to you this far. So I would absolutely love this pick if the Pittsburgh Steelers draft Makai Lemon out of USC. So what say you guys? Let me know down there in the comment section. Should the Pittsburgh Steelers target wide receiver in round 1 this spring? Give me a yes if you think they should go wide receiver in round 1, or type no if you think they should go quarterback, corner, offensive guard, something else. Let me know what you guys think down there in the comments section. But for me, guys, DK Metcalf and Makai Lemon for the next 4 years would be absolutely incredible. I would completely be on board with that pairing for the next 4 years, because you do have DK Metcalf under contract for the next 4 years after this season. And then, of course, you get Lemon for at least the next 4 years on his rookie contract. So this would lock in the Steelers wide receiver duo for the next nearly half decade. And it might even get you your future number 1 wide receiver in Makai Lemon, who might take over for DK once this pairing eventually runs its course and DK runs out the clock on this current contract. But then we move over to Trevor Sikkema from Pro Football Focus, and he also has the Steelers taking a wide receiver in round 1, this time Denzel Boston out of Washington. This is what Trevor Sikkema has to say about the Husky wide receiver and his fit with Pittsburgh. The Steelers have had no dependable option outside of DK Metcalf this season, and that's exactly what the smooth-moving, 6'4", 210-pound Boston can be for them. He has earned an 87.1 receiving grade this season with an impressive 89.8 receiving grade against man coverage. All right, and this is another guy that I would be perfectly cool with if the Pittsburgh Steelers wanted to go get him. He's a big body, smooth route runner, maybe not the fastest guy in the world, but he's going to be somebody that can get open versus man coverage, and somebody that you really depend on to be that big body route runner that can make tough catches towards the sideline. I think that he's exactly the type of receiver that the Pittsburgh Steelers could use, and you could add, another 6'4" wide receiver, in this offense here, and you could make a, kind of the twin towers here with DK Metcalf, who maybe isn't the best at the catch point. He's pretty good at the catch point, but that's not really what he does. He's more of a yak guy, in my opinion. He's more of a guy where you get him ahead of steam, and he's not going to be caught because of his speed and size combination. Boston isn't that same kind of athlete. Even at 210 pounds, he's nearly 20 pounds lighter than Metcalf, but, he's got incredible technique. He's got the full route tree at his disposal. That's something DK Metcalf staff does not have at his disposal. And I think that these two at 6'4" would really give you not only a tall and big, but also a very complementary wide receiver duo, again, for about the next half decade. So take your pick for me down there in the comment section between these two excellent first-round wide receivers. Which one would you rather have here in Pittsburgh? Type ML for Makai Lemon or DB for Denzel Boston. Let me know what you guys think down there in the comment section. For me, I would give the slight edge to Makai Lemon, but I would be perfectly fine with Denzel Boston as well. Now, I want to end today's show with a little bit of an interesting insight here from Steelers legend Ben Roethlisberger, where on his podcast, The Football and Podcast, he said that the outside noise surrounding the football team and specifically head coach Mike Tomlin will actually work to bring this Steelers locker room together down the stretch here, and it's exactly what they need to build that team chemistry as they try and get into the postseason. This is what Roethlisberger had to say earlier this week. He says, the outside noise is outside noise. Keep it right here. But that's what you need. You need the outside noise this time of the year so that they can, come together. It's the perfect time to, everyone's talking about us. Good, bad, ugly. Here we go. Circle the wagons. We're bringing it in. We're leading the division. And, I think that this really, strikes at a real point here that I want to make about this Pittsburgh Steelers team, guys, is that, yes, adversity has certainly hit this football team, all right? 5 of your 6 losses have come against teams with at least 9-4 records. They've played one team with a double-digit win record so far this season. The only, quote-unquote, bad loss you have on your resume right now is the Cincinnati Bengals, and you put up a bunch of points in that game. You nearly won that game. And in most of the games that you've lost, outside of, Buffalo and a couple others, you've actually been in the game, and you've had leads in those games against playoff caliber teams. Not to mention, you've overcome some of that adversity by beating some playoff caliber teams. The Ravens were in the playoff picture last week. You beat them. All right, you beat the Indianapolis Colts at home and really had that game handled midway through the fourth quarter at the height of the Colts' powers this season. All right, then you also beat the number 1 seed currently in the AFC, the New England Patriots, on the road because your defense was stellar in that game and forced a bunch of turnovers. All right, so we've seen this Pittsburgh Steelers team being able to compete with playoff caliber teams all season long, and this adversity that they've had to go through this year, I think is really bringing this team together. And I think that they're going to be battle tested when and if this team does get into the postseason come January. And especially when you're a player and then the outside media is coming for your head coach that you love and you want to play for, and all these different things. You kind of put it upon yourself to take responsibility for that and really try and play better because of the guy that's representing you as your head coach. Just what Cam Hayward told Chris Sims this week about the outside noise surrounding Mike Tomlin. He says, as they talk about Mike, we got to own that as players because we want this guy around and we got to play well. And I think our leadership really own that. All right, so that really shows you that Cam Hayward and the rest of the people in the Steelers locker room, they want to play well, not just because they want to play well for each other and win playoff games and all this stuff. That's true, but they also want to get the media off of Mike Tomlin's back. They love him as a head coach. They love playing for him, and they don't want to see him go. So their response to that is, we have to be the ones that get us the victories. We have to be the ones that go out there and keep Mike Tomlin around, essentially. So I think that this team clearly has a lot of confidence right now. Alex Highsmith made some very he kind of called his shot and said that, the goal absolutely this year is to win the Super Bowl, and that's what this team is chasing. This is what Alex Highsmith had to say earlier this week. He says, we're chasing a Super Bowl, and that's what it is. We have a great team, and everyone in this locker room trusts each other. First, we got to win the division, of course, but we know if we get in, we'll make some noise. We just got to continue to trust the process and continue to look at the film and not get complacent, not get satisfied, because we know there's a lot of ball ahead of us. We have great leaders on our team. We have great leaders in our locker room. So we got to go out there and do the best we can for those guys. But the urgency is at an all-time high, and it starts next week when we're playing the Dolphins at home. And then specifically about playing for Mike Tomlin as his head coach, this is what Highsmith had to say. He says, I'm grateful for how calm Mike stayed throughout the process, ups and downs. He continues to come in and be the same coach that he is day in and day out. I love playing for him. I love playing for this team. We're just going to keep fighting and keep stacking wins. And guys, I do think this is one of the best things about Mike Tomlin as a head coach is his leadership of the locker room and how he gets these players to play for him, to play for each other, and to stay bought in and locked in throughout the course of an NFL season. Does it always go the Steelers' way? No, it does not. Last year is an example of that, but you can tell the people in this locker room are completely bought in to the entire season, no matter how things are going, and that is a testament, in my opinion, to Mike Tomlin's leadership. So let me know what you guys think down there in the comments section and grade Mike Tomlin's leadership as a coach. All right, we're not talking about schematics here. We're not talking about, team building or anything like that, because I think that those are very valid criticisms of Mike Tomlin. But in my opinion, he's a great leader. Let me know what you guys think about his leadership down there in the comment section, A, B, C, D, or F. And if you're saying D or F, do you think guys like Mike Tomlin and Alex Highsmith are idiots for thinking that he's a good leader? Like, I think we should, take it right from the horse's mouth here. These players in the locker room love playing for Mike Tomlin, and I don't think that that's fake. I think that that's absolutely real, and I don't think that kind of genuine love and care for a head coach comes out of nowhere. I think it comes from great leadership, and I think that's something that definitely Mike Tomlin brings to the table here in Pittsburgh. All right, that'll be it for today's edition of Steelers News and Rumors. We're going to have more for you guys tomorrow. The Steelers will begin their practice schedule for Monday Night Football tomorrow, so if we get any updates on that, I'm sure Aaron Rodgers will talk to the media tomorrow. There should be plenty to talk about tomorrow right here on Steelers Talk, so if you don't want to miss any of our content here, make sure you click that subscribe button if you haven't already. Till next time, guys, here we go, Steelers.